Okay, hello everyone. This is John Gammon from the Gammon headquarters to talk to you a little bit about OpenShift and how we make it easy for the development community to use OpenShift and very, very efficient for them to deploy their applications without having to spend a lot of time or money learning all the ins and outs of Kubernetes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you right through all of these things, and let's just get right to it. This is the console. I'm going to go ahead and log in as a developer. And what I'm showing you here is what I'm going to do in the space of about 5 minutes, right? I'm going to show you deploying an application without knowing anything about Kubernetes. I'm just going to take the source code and deploy it out into the environment. And then I'm going to show you a little bit more about how you can be very innovative with how you treat features for your customer base. And the purpose of that is helping you develop that digital relationship with your customers so that you understand what's important to them and you can gain a competitive advantage by deploying features which are useful to the client base. So I'm going to do all of this in 5 minutes. So let me show you how I did it, and we're going to start at the very beginning. And the very beginning is, let's go ahead and create a project. So I'm going to create a project. I'm going to call this the SSP setup scenario 1. And I'll just copy that for the display name. And I'm going to create a project. And the project is really an administrative boundary. It provides security, it provides isolation. But as you can see, as a developer, I was able to go ahead and create a project for myself. I have the ability then to control the project. And let me just show you a little bit about how you do that. The first thing you have to be able to do with the project is define who can access your project. So whether you're the tech lead or maybe just another developer, you need to be able to control who accesses the project. So I can just go in, select a user, give them a role, I can, whatever. And now I can add my team in there and they've got access to all the components of the project. All right. So the next thing is going back into my topology. I don't have anything deployed to my project yet. Well, that's one of the first things you want to do. So the question is what do I have access to? So I don't have to build everything from scratch. And one of the nice things about using OpenShift is we have this very extensive catalog supported by, literally hundreds and hundreds of vendors that all provide their components on, for cloud-based application development. And you can see that, this is just a smattering of everything we have. This is by no means exclusive. You can add to it, you subtract from it, all depends upon your organizational goals. And let me just show you here that all the various application runtime, programming languages are fully supported with baseline images, and that's important for any development you're doing on-house, plus additionally, potentially third-party applications if all they give you is the source code. All right, so I have access to a lot of things. This allows me to be creative. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we need to add an application, just like I showed you that I was going to do at the beginning. So the first application I'm going to add, and the purpose of this application is just really just to show you how easy it is to add an application. So I'm just going to go to my source code control. I'm going to copy the root directory of where that source code control is. I'm going to go ahead and paste it into the screen. And what happens behind the scenes is Red Hat goes out, the OpenShift console goes out, looks at the source code, identifies what the programming language is, says, oh, gee, we've got a Node.js base image that's available here that we can use along that. So that's automatically configured for me or identified for me. And then I've got a couple of other features in here, the most important being creating a route. And a route is just about allowing access of customers to come in, clients to come in and use that application. So I'm just going to go ahead and deploy this as is. And what you see here is a topology view. And I'm going to now show you a little bit more about the deployment model. And what this little blue, light blue means is that something's being deployed. Well, it doesn't give me a lot of information. So what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to look at the logs of the build configuration. It's pulling the source code, marrying it to the base image, and then going to deploy it out. And it's pulling down all the libraries that that you should always scan ahead of time, of course. And it's just very quickly deploying the application as needed. And what you'll see here at the beginning is the push is successful from the build config. And now if I go to my topology, I've got a running application. Well, let's just make sure it's running. So I'm going to go ahead and click the URL, and I'm going to say, hello, Dan Simmons. And sure enough, it's all working, and it's all working just fine. So there's a couple of things that happen there that are really important from an efficiency perspective. Notice that I didn't really have to do anything in terms of configuring the pods or anything like that. All of that was actually generated for me. And what's generated is essentially the deployment, configuration. And now, what the deployment configuration looks like, if you look at what the actual editing of it looks like, is very complicated. So if you were to hand code this, there are like 50 distributions of Kubernetes out there. I'd say none of them provide a generation tool for building all the YAML for the components that are necessary to deploy applications out into Kubernetes. And I didn't have to code any of this. I got a valid YAML ready to go. And the thing is, this is also accessible in case I need to add an annotation for specific reasons or whatever. But in any case, that's what OpenShift is doing for me to make it easy for me to go ahead and develop. I don't have to have build a container image on my own. I don't have to configure any of the YAML. By the way, it's not just one YAML component. Whoops. So there's deployment configs, there's service YAMLs, there's a route YAML, there's config map YAMLs, and there are secrets. So there's a lot of different components that happen behind the scenes to make it a valid application deployment. We hide all that from you, make it simple. All right, so that's the first thing. So now let's go back to our deployment config. And one of the things that is always hard for people to do is, do I want to scale my application up? Now I can auto scale this. I'm not going to show you that in this video, but I can very easily just go ahead and scale it to 2 or 3 applications, and they'll all be running in my topology. And I've got 3 versions of the pods running here. And then if I go back to my deployment, I go ahead and draw it back down. So very, very simple, very, very easy. So now the question is I'm going to make changes to the application. I'm not going to segment traffic or anything like that. But what I want to do is I want to add, application value. So I'm going to say myvar equals myvar, say 2. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. And what's going to happen is that I don't have to trigger anything. By making that simple change, OpenShift is going to go out and redeploy the application based upon the deployment config actually changing. So those are all nice things that happen that make you able to deploy your applications without any specific knowledge about Kubernetes, and you can focus on the business value. So, but there's more to the story than just that. There's one other aspect that I want to point out, and being productive in an organization can't be just about you being productive in your single role. There are relationships to other roles in the organization. And one of the things that I'd point out is security is a very, very big, aspect of this. And there's some things about what a container does for you that a virtual machine can't do for you. So I'm going to show you why a container is more efficient and more secure than a virtual machine image. And it's actually very simple. I'm just going to go ahead and show the processes and the user that is running at this container in the environment. And you can see here that the processes, there's only 4 processes running, virtually nothing. If I were to, run a process just on my little laptop here, which is kind of a Linux-based system, and I do the same thing, you're going to see literally thousands of processes running. So it's much more efficient than what a full operating system would look like. The second thing is that this user ID is obfuscated user ID, very, very secure. Bad actors can't really deduce what that user ID number is going to be. It makes it very, very hard, very, very small attack surface. And the other thing that's important about this is that the application container itself is immutable. So those are a little aside about how this makes the use of resources and security much more efficient. All right, so let's get back to the delivery of the application. What's most important? So your application developers can now deploy applications very, very efficiently, But that's not the end of the story. You want to be able to build a digital relationship with your customers. And the only way to do that is continuously interacting with them and understanding what it is they value about the services or the products that you're providing. And so I'm going to show you how you can do that in an effective way right now. So I'm going to go ahead and, just like we did before, I'm going to add an application. I'm going to copy it here again into, let's just make sure I didn't forget to change it. Oh, I did. Hold on. Let me just set it back to version 1 so we know where we are. So I'm going to commit that change. Doesn't really change anything. I just want to make sure we start from a simple process. So I'm going to go to the AV deploy. Again, it's going to go out. It's going to validate it. Now I'm using PHP, so you can see it works for any image. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to accept all the defaults, and I'm going to go ahead and deploy this. So now you can see it's coming up. And if I were to turn on the log, so we could just take a look at that, it was very, very fast. And oh, I see that's the Node.js. Sorry. Here we go. So then we go into view logs. Here it is pushing it. And again, these blobs, that just lets you know that this is a container image. You know, you can't really change the binary aspect of it. It's being built. The push was successful, moves very fast. So time is actually an important factor. And let's go ahead and open it. Oh yeah, there I am. I'm version 1. Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make version 2. And unlike what I did with the Node.js application, I'm actually going to use version 2 as a way to talk and speak and understand what's valuable to my customers when I deploy a feature without having to risk deploying it to everyone at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to, again, go through the same source to image build. And I'm going to, actually, before I do that, I'm going to go in and I'm going to go ahead and change this to version 2 of the application. Going to commit the change. So this has my new cool feature in it that I want to see if my population likes it. And I'm going to go back into the application and I'm going to do the A/B deploy. Now in this case, I have to do a small little change. So the application already, A/B deploy is already out there. So I'm going to call this V2. And application V2 is out there. I'm going to create a route just so you can see it running, but then I'm going to delete that route. So let's go ahead and deploy it. And now it's going to go through the same process. We're not going to, probably watch the logs. We're just going to let it go. Give it a second here. And all we really want to do is validate that the application was deployed properly. Now, in a real runtime scenario, I would probably not be creating the route. I'd be waiting on the route to, I'd be waiting to configure the route. So it's coming up, the push is being successful. It's now running. You can see that visual cue from the round circle blue. So I'm going to go ahead and check it. Yeah, there's version 2. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my routes. So I'm going to go into my route. So this is the route for the deploy V2. I don't want the outside world to see this route. So I'm going to delete this route. This is another really critical advantage of OpenShift. It's not just about creating things, it also cleans things up for you, which means it prunes all of that data that's being created and you don't run into some sort of contention or sizing problem that you would with if you didn't understand what was happening under the covers. And that's really important so your operational teams don't have to take on more manual effort, more et cetera. So by enabling the ability to delete components as well as create them automatically, you've now added both sides of the coin. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in to edit my route, and I'm going to add an alternate service here, and I'm going to give that alternate service. First of all, I'm going to select it. There's my deploy V2 app that doesn't have access right now to the outside world. I'm going to go ahead and make it a 20. And I'm going to save it. And basically, you can see that I'm going to send 16% of my traffic to the new version, 83% of my traffic to the existing version. And I can make that go lower or higher based upon the weighting. By the way, I don't have to segment my traffic based upon simple round robin. I can use other much more informative and customer specific segmentation to be able to mediate that traffic. Notice I don't have to go to the networking team. I don't have to go to the operational team. I can actually see how this behaves in a scenario that I can control. So now I'm going to go in and I'm going to go back to this route, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this route, which is the existing route, and I'll go back to the topology. So there's all three applications, just like I told you I was going to deliver. And now we're going to test it as if we were, thousands of users out there in the environment, and I should see about 16% of my traffic going to the new version versus the old version. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that. And sure enough, there's version 2, there's version 2, there's version 2. So 3 out of 20 is, well, it's, I guess, 16%, something along those lines. If I did something a little easier math, then, we'd be able to see it. But in any case, this is a way for you to test how features being received. It's also maybe a way to introduce promotions. There's all sorts of business, things that you can do with this in terms of adding in, data science scorecards, or using models of AI models to determine which customer should see which version of an app. So with that being said, that's really all we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you really take a strong look at OpenShift, because no one else can deliver the productivity that we can as fast as we can. Thanks for watching.